Hi, everybody. Welcome along to episode 32 of Percussion Discussion. Hope you're all well out there and enjoying our interviews. Please check out all our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course on YouTube. And if you would be willing to subscribe to our YouTube channel, we'd be really, really grateful. Anyway, on to today's guest. This is the far youngest drummer that I've spoken to, 19 years old, an incredible drummer, the son of a very famous drummer. He's grown up around his dad, watching him perform as a singer and a drummer over the years. And he's actually been on tour with him at the age of 15. And now he's taking on the drum seat with the incredible Genisis, an amazing story. It gives me huge pleasure to welcome Mr. Nic Collins.
Of course, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, it really is. Now, usually at the start of the interview, I go into, we talk about it's a very strange time for everybody, challenging, especially for musicians and people in the arts. How about yourself? What have you been up to? Have you managed to? I can see you're in a lovely little studio there. So have you managed to?
Yeah, I mean it's been weird, and it's kind of thrown a few of the plans that obviously we had with Genesis that were supposed to happen last November. It was just weird. I remember we rehearsed January 2020. We did these like introduction rehearsals, I guess you could call it. It was my first rehearsals with the guys, and just to see how it would sound and see if everybody still wanted to do it. And then by the time the announcement came out, I think it was like 2 weeks later, the CDC announced it was a pandemic, and I was like, oh my god, so that's been weird. But to be honest, like it's helped in the other kind of area musically of my life with my own band, Better Strangers, because we've finally found. Well, we had the project had been looking for a singer for quite a while, and we finally got one, and we've really been able to get together, record, and write more music because we hadn't really had a choice to go out and tour. So that's been helpful, and having really cheap flights to get people coming down here has been also pretty helpful too. But I just think, and I think I speak for most drummers, I just want this thing to be over so we can go back on the road. And it's looking pretty optimistic, now with the amount of vaccines that are being rolled out. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that the Genesis tour can actually happen this September.
Yeah, sure. Because it's a big deal, and there's so many people. I don't think there's any tickets available. I think the tickets have gone straight away, which, so it'd be great. I think there's a lot of people with their fingers crossed, and it's looking good, isn't it? I think it's looking pretty healthy. Are you feeling quite confident about it?
I think so. I mean, at first it was weird. We did production rehearsals back in November, November 2020, and I mean it was awesome to play with the big stage and the lights and the production. But there was this weird feeling of kind of like, are we ever going to play this in front of people? And I mean, the whole band kind of thought that, it was kind of a weird thing because at that point, there was no vaccine yet. Nobody knew what was going on. And it was kind of like, well, if we have to wait another 2 years, is there even a point in doing this anymore? But now, the kind of, I guess the narrative's changed in the world, and with, how quickly the UK is rolling out this vaccine. And so I'm hoping that, I'd like to think that, it'll happen in September. And, second time, I think it's been pushed back. So I hope that's the last time. And so we can actually go ahead and start doing it.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, will you have to do a lot more rehearsals and stuff, or are you done now? Are you ready to go? Or is it just, would you have like a refresher rehearsal or?
Yeah, we'll probably do that. Probably do 2 weeks or so of, it's just weird to get really tight and then be like, all right, see you guys in 10 months, we don't know when this is happening. So we'll do like you said, a refresher rehearsal. The production stuff has kind of been sorted. So it'll kind of probably be a week and a half of normal rehearsals, music rehearsals, and doing 2 days with the stage and before we start playing. So, but yeah, I mean, it sounded pretty tight near the end of the first rehearsal in January 2020. And then, by the end of this one in November, it was pretty, show ready, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that, usually you do those production rehearsals and then you're on the road right after. This was kind of rehearsing just to go back home,
Because let's be honest, we're not talking 4 on the floor material here, are we? This is
exactly
tricky stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that. I mean, that's been like, I think before the January rehearsals, that was really kind of one of those things. I mean, I was months ahead, kind of just really trying to, get my, get the parts correctly. But after the January ones and after the November ones, I think it's like really in a really comfortable spot now where, probably a month or 2 before we rehearse again, start refreshing the material and all that. But honestly, I mean, it's been so long in the making that like, it's I've been working on this material for like almost 2 years. It seems it's funny.
But tell me, Nic, were you familiar with the whole Genesis set before the set list was perhaps given to you? Did you have pretty good knowledge of all the Genesis songs, or did you have to do a lot of homework?
It was kind of a mix. I mean, like obviously, I mean, when I grew up, my dad's solo material was really more at the forefront because when I was like 3 or 4 when he went on his final farewell tour. So that music, when we did that tour for 3 years, the Not Dead Yet tour, that ended in 2019. That was kind of more of a, the material that I kind of really knew, and it was like from my childhood. It was kind of knew like the back of my hand. It was kind of a mix. I mean, obviously there was some songs that, I've known for ages, but it was really the deeper cuts and the more progressive stuff that obviously, there was songs like Firth the Fifth and stuff that I knew, in the cage and whatnot. But there was obviously some stuff like, when it's a few of the songs that I didn't really kind of, wasn't really aware of. And honestly, it's been really cool to prepare for this gig because I found that as I'm digging through the material to learn it, I'm finding also a bunch of other material and kind of becoming more of a fan of the band,
Sure.
Which has been really enjoyable. But obviously there's some songs that I was kind of like, hadn't listened to, and then you listen to it, you're like, oh my God, this is what I've got to kind of try and learn. And funnily enough, I don't want to name any songs because if there's Genesis fans, who are going to watch this, they're going to be pissed that they're not on the set list. But there are some songs, like the hardest ones that I had to learn, are all not on the set list. So I was kind of like sitting there like, are you serious? I spent months learning these tracks just for them not to be on the set. But I'm not going to say because
that's quite, I don't mean it's funny, but you get where I'm going. But yeah,
no, of course, yeah.
Well, look, there's a friend of mine, and I know your paths have crossed as well, a great British drummer, Wayne Proctor. And Wayne has sent a question over, and what is the hardest Genesis song to play? Now, obviously, I don't want you to give the game away. What's in the set? It can, whether it's in the set or not, it doesn't matter. But what in your eyes, what is the hardest song to play from the Genesis repertoire?
I think that there's 2 that stand out really, as main ones. I think off the top of my head, and that's Los Endos and Supper's Ready. Well, Apocalypse and 9/8, kind of last 10 minutes or so of Supper's Ready. I mean, Los Endos, the thing with that is it's fast and it's a, pretty intricate drum part, but it's to me, a lot of the stuff with the Genesis material, which has been fun, but also been a bit challenging, is I can't count to that Genesis stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Just because I could, but it's not going to help me at all. Like, it's going to throw me off. So I just have to memorize the parts and memorize the riffs. And that's how so Los Endos has a lot of parts that kind of, I end up counting how many times, one chord is being played, and it's like 20 times. I'm like, all right, now we're going to this part. So and then with, Apocalypse and 9/8 from Supper's Ready, that was just more of a, I think what was challenging was memorizing the riff, but also having to play the intricate parts, because my dad used to do certain bits where he would accent the keyboard solo. Yeah. But the way Tony Banks approached the keyboard solo was more of a 4/4 thing. Yeah. So you've got a 9/8 groove trying to accent a 4/4 solo, which that was pretty challenging. But honestly, I think it's like, like I said, once I've kind of memorized the riffs and memorized the parts, it's been all right. It's just, there's just one mistake and all of a sudden you're on like some crazy offbeat that you don't know where you are in the song anymore.
Sure.
So off the top of my head, those are the ones that have been the most difficult. To be honest, actually, Home by the Sea has been a bit challenging, the second half of Home by the Sea, because the part is, it's not that difficult. I mean, it's got a bit of a tricky bass drum part, but it's pretty straightforward. But like I said, there's certain intricacies where, one hit doesn't go on one because the one actually comes on the three, and it's like all this stuff that you have to pay attention to. Yeah. And really, at the end of the day, I just look at Daryl Sturmer, the guitarist, because he's right all the time. So I'll look at him and I'll know that I'm okay if I'm looking at him and paying attention.
So he's your safety blanket, if you like.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's always been the guy that, always is correct and always knows all the parts. So I look at him and, I just need a little glance. I'm like, all right, we're all right. And if I don't see that glance, I start to panic and be like, am I in the right part of the song? But
sure,
it's been fun, and it's been great to play. And I think a good thing is how, I guess, not anxious, but how nervous, but not I was of preparing for this Genesis stuff has kind of made me over prepare, if you'd like. I mean, really kind of digging into the material months before, so that when I am going to play it with the guys, I don't, it's not kind of new to me,
Yeah. And I guess it's not the sort of, it's not the kind of music you can have much freedom to get creative, put your own stamp on it. It needs to go how it goes. And I guess, is that, would you say that's true?
I mean, it really depends from song to song. I mean, you have, like I said, songs like Home by the Sea and certain songs that have parts, and you've got to play those parts and those fills, like songs like Mama or Land of Confusion. Those are songs that, you're going to play the part, and also there's lots of triggers going on, and you're really trying to bring back that sound that was on the record or, live from whether it was in the 80s or the 90s. But there's some of the earlier progressive stuff has been fun to, kind of mix in, because obviously I'm playing the part the way it is. But I also think that some of the guys in the band, I mean, Tony and Mike and my dad, realized that if a track was recorded in 1971, it's probably not the best idea to play it like it was in 1971 now, just to kind of, have a bit more stuff. And I feel like actually there are some songs that I've been able to have some freedom on because, it's 4 musicians playing at once. So there's much more space. With my dad's tour, on the Not Dead Yet tour, we were like 14 or 15 people on stage. Yeah. So if you start to kind of get a bit too far out from your position, you can kind of tell. Whereas this has been a lot more, in a way, like there's been this freedom behind the kit, but also knowing that, like, I know that I'm supposed to play these, certain parts, but I know that there's little windows where, I can kind of, do some different stuff. But honestly, with the material, it's just I really enjoyed playing with the guys in Genesis, because I can kind of relate that they're songwriters. They're not like these perfect anal musicians who are like, oh, this is where you do this is where you do that. They're songwriters, and they wrote these songs, and that's kind of been something that's been really fun to kind of be about, because I can kind of relate to that more than just being a perfect musician. I mean, that's not really what I kind of am. It's like, I like to write songs, I like to write drum parts. So playing these parts has been, much more in my wheelhouse than other stuff,
Yeah, of course. I have to ask this, right? And I'm going to apologize in advance, but during rehearsals, did your dad ever turn around and say, no, it doesn't go like that? Or was there any point you went, oh.
I'm trying to, I mean, there's like on the first, when I was touring with him by himself, with his band, there were a few moments where, obviously I was younger, and there was a few moments where he'd turn around and be like, telling me either to speed it up or slow it down, or, certain fills and certain feels of, where he was at when he was writing those parts. And you have those moments every now and then, I mean, there'll be some times where I'll do something, and at the end of the song, he'll look at me and he goes, just next time you do that fill, just think of Stuart Copeland.
Oh, cool.
And that's all I need. I'm like, all right, that's the kind of way you approach that fill. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much you can kind of decipher from listening to the record, because you can make it sound like it, but I guess the feel, sometimes relies on kind of knowing the headspace. But ultimately, I before we ever started rehearsing, I did ask my dad, I said, Dad, I need you to come upstairs. when I was living at home, I need you to come upstairs. I need you to sit there. I'm going to play the hard songs. You need to tell me if I did all right, and tell me if there's anything different. So doing that and just preparing has been where more of the progressive stuff, I think it's been, actually weirdly, it's been easier to approach that with him because, I think that those, I've kind of tried to nail as much as I could, but there's obviously some songs that have like the distinct big kind of gated reverb concert tom things that you kind of need to really know the approach to, to do that stuff. But honestly, I think there was one moment where we finished playing a song and my dad looked at me and he said, "You can slow that down if possible." And I'm like, "All right." And then we played it again. And then Mike Rutherford turns around and goes, "Can you speed it up a little bit?" And it's like, I'm like, sure, man. I mean, it's a funny dynamic, but honestly, it's not been, it's not, there hasn't been that much of that, thank God. Because I feel like, I've tried to prepare myself as much as I could, but, of course there's moments here and there. And I'm like, I don't take it badly. If he tells me something, I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll do it. Next time we play it. So, yeah.
So there's no clicks involved at all. Obviously, playing to click would be very difficult with some of the time signatures anyway. It would be a nightmare to program, wouldn't it? So is it all? It's all.
The progressive stuff is not. There's no click on that. There's the only, I guess, click you could call is the songs that have like drum machines on it. Songs like Mama and songs like Duchess and Domino. The 808s and stuff like that. So obviously, I'm playing along to those because if I'm going out of time with those, then it's a train wreck waiting to happen. But that's the only stuff. I mean, there's a few songs where I have a click where I will start, listen to the click before the song happens, get the feel, then turn it off and then start the song. Just because sometimes, you can get a bit excited during a show or, a bit of adrenaline or too much coffee that day. And you started a few BPMs faster than it should be,
Absolutely. It's just, it's an inspiring story. It's because you're obviously in a very unique position, everybody knows who your dad is, and you're still a young guy. I mean, are you 19, Nick?
Yeah,
19 years old, and I was having this conversation with somebody, and there's a lot of people say, "Oh, well, they should have this guy," but you're no passenger. You've paid your dues already, haven't you? You've got the skills. I mean, I've been watching lots of footage from the tour you did with your dad, and a fantastic drummer, a phenomenal drummer. So it is a really unique position, isn't it? And it must be one that's, I don't know, do you get nervous about stuff? Because such a young guy with such,
I mean, it honestly, weirdly, when they announced the Genisis tour, I was kind of waiting for that, wrath of the Genisis fans, because, there's a part of the Genisis fans that are very welcoming to new things. And there's some that are very, wish it was 1975, and I completely get that. I mean, they probably still resent my dad for becoming the singer and Peter Gabriel not still being the singer. I mean, and I understand that. Yeah. But to be honest, it's actually surprisingly, they've been very supportive. Obviously, I get that there's some people who are like, "Oh, Chester should be doing this," and Chester's great, and I a lot of the parts that I'm playing are inspired by the way Chester approached them live, and so. He's a great drummer, but I actually think that I kind of got more of that on the first tour that I did with my dad. Okay. Because I was young, I was like 16, 15, 16. And when it started, it was kind of like, this must be nice getting a gig just because your dad's Phil Collins. And I completely get that. I mean, I get that sentiment of doing it, but I feel like since we've done that tour for 3 years and I feel like, I did a fairly okay job on it. I felt like, I did a decent job on it. So this time there hasn't been any kind of, at least to me personally, been any kind of like, not animosity, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
A bit of tension, I guess, for what it is. But, there's obviously that pressure. I mean, I think, when you sit there and, it's the way the show starts, really. I mean, when I started the show with my dad, it's a slow, the first song was Against All Odds, and then I went to Another Day in Paradise, so it's a bit of a slow one. Whereas this, I'm not going to name the song, but it kind of starts with a bit of a bang. Yeah. So that's kind of one of the things that, even when I sit down before we start rehearsing, I get a bit nervous because you kind of go 0 to 100 straight away, and you don't have that time to kind of settle in. And it's different playing in a rehearsal room with the crew and, the band rather than to an actual audience. So since we haven't done that yet, I'm sure I'll be pretty nervous for that. But in all honesty, I haven't, a lot of people have been super supportive and super kind of cool about it. And then again, I also kind of would say that I wouldn't want to be playing the gig just because of who my dad was. Because I mean, it'd be a waste of time for me, it'd be a waste of time for them. And also I feel like with Genesis, it's three, I have three bosses, my dad, Mike, and Tony.
Sure.
So if it was just pleasing my dad, I don't think I would have gotten the gig at all.
Yeah.
So it's been rewarding to kind of to play with the guys and then really be supportive, really like what I bring to the table. But of course, I completely understand the side of certain fans who they see it how it is, and I'm at the end of the day, I'm my dad's son. Mm-hmm. So I get the kind of instinct and the first kind of impression that you may have on it. So it's not something that really bothers me.
Good. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the guys in Genesis are no mugs. They're no fools. And there's no way on earth they would compromise the Genesis name by having somebody who wasn't up to the job. And at such a young age, you have an incredible talent, Nick. You really do. And, wish you all the best.
Thank you.
It's going to be, it's going to be great. And I look forward to, I don't have a ticket, but hopefully I will, there'll be plenty of footage online. You can't escape it these days, can you? So all mobile phones and everything. So I shall look forward to seeing that. But let's go back to, because it's a fascinating story, really. And can we go back to kind of where music began for you? Can you remember your kind of, it seems silly saying earliest influences. Obviously, we all know who your dad is, but was there, did you see your dad at the time, when you were little? Did you understand what was going on? Or did you find your own way into music? How did it happen for you?
Well, I mean, definitely at a young age, it was kind of always there. I mean, there's videos of me as a kind of, I guess you could say like 1.5, 2-year-old baby on my dad's lap on the drums, but it was it was always there, and I always gravitated towards the drums from a really early age, and I've been playing for as long as I can remember. But at a certain point in time, it's just you like to play drums. At first I didn't think of it as something serious. I love doing it, but when you're a 5-year-old kid, you don't know what it really is. And I knew my dad mainly as Phil Collins, the solo artist, because when I went on tour with him, he was singing. Obviously I saw him play drums because he did that as well during his shows, but it wasn't until a few years ago where I really started delving into some Genesis stuff and going, my God, this guy was a absolute unit behind the drums, which was, obviously I knew that he was, but I didn't really analyze it the way that I did when I kind of revisited it years later. But I liked drumming at a young age, and I think when I moved, I was born in Switzerland, and so when I moved to the US in like 2012, I was like 11 or 12. I kind of realized that I wasn't very good at anything else but playing drums. So I went, I'm going to really kind of start focusing on this. So apart from my dad, obviously, a lot of my drumming heroes, likes of Chad Smith, who I know you've had on the show before. Sure. And obviously guys like John Bonham. I mean, he's always going to be like my biggest drum hero, which is funny because, Jason and I'm very close to Jason Bonham, John's son. Yeah. And so it's been a really kind of nice thing to kind of bond with him over, the similarities that we have in terms of who our dads are and all that stuff. But, John Bonham, Chad Smith, and, there's a laundry list of names, Taylor Hawkins, Gavin Harrison, loads of guys that, as more time passes, you kind of start to understand different drummers more, as to before. And actually, really, a lot of it was when I formed my own band, which we're now known as Better Strangers. But I formed, I've been in bands with the bassist and the guitarist, Joey and Yannick for years. I mean, since we were since we were freshmen in high school. So it's been really one of those things that, like, being with them has kind of like expanded the musical influences and the musical kind of stuff that we do, and therefore kind of exposing me to more and more genres and more drummers. So I guess it definitely stemmed from my dad. I mean, it was funny because I didn't realize how much we came across these like home videos over Christmas from when I was, like a toddler, and him telling me, what's, I think it was like special ingredient number 1 was, including the kick drum in your fills, and special ingredient 2 was keeping the hi-hat going when you weren't using the hi-hat. All this stuff that I didn't really know how much, how intense it was. It wasn't intense, but I didn't know it actually went to that extent. I thought it was just like, hey, here's a drum set, do what you'd like on it. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's due to him, but I think as time has gone on, and when I moved to Miami, it was really when I kind of went, okay, this is what I kind of want to do with my life,
Sure. Did you study at all for drums, or is it just something you've just picked up and just ran with it?
Well, at first I just picked up the sticks, and then I did have a teacher for a few years when I moved to the US, which obviously, I thought, my technique was pretty horrible beforehand. So that kind of made me, up my game on my technique and learn different genres and different, different rudiments and whatnot from different musical areas. Sure. And now I think that it really depends. I think like the way I approach learning and practicing is become more of a, listening to music and seeing like what I like and what I don't like, and listening to it, and more kind of trying to, instead of like looking at a book and seeing exactly how to do that rudiment, it's kind of listening to it and seeing how I'd approach it and doing it my own way, which is kind of, I felt like as time's gone on, it's been a bit more fun rather than sitting down and trying to kind of like, rip your hair out because you can't do the specific thing, and actually kind of understanding the context of where that would make sense. I think that's actually more important than the rudiment itself, is where you could actually use it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a good answer. I'm glad you said that, because that's it makes a lot of sense the way you answered that then. So that's fantastic. No, hey, no problem at all. Now, look, I don't normally sort of write questions down, but this one, I was thinking about stuff this afternoon, so you'll have to pardon me. I'm gonna read this one. This is the only question I actually have written down. And it's, to millions of drummers around the world, the words Phil Collins mean one of the world's greatest drummers. But to you, they mean dad. Aside from his drumming, what life qualities has your dad inspired you to follow?
I mean, there's a lot, like I said, like I've said to people, a lot of the time I get questions like, how does it feel to have Phil Collins as your dad? And I'm like, well, you have a dad. It's just like that, like you would say, he's like obviously one of my heroes drumming wise, but I just think life wise, I think, the guy has been through a lot and done his fair share of stuff throughout his entire life. And I think learning from that and having conversations with him of just how to approach life in different situations, not just music. I mean, it's hard to kind of put my thumb on just one, put my finger on just one, but it was honestly just kind of like what I found is kind of not been so much of what we've spoken about, because obviously when we talk about it, it's applying to one specific thing that we're having a conversation about. But I kind of like looking at his career and looking, reading his book, has kind of put things into perspective of like the kind of person he wanted to be when he was a musician, because he didn't do music just to kind of sell records. I mean, he did sell loads of records, but the music that he started making in the 90s and early 2000s, or even his jazz band stuff, it kind of spoke a bit of volumes of whether you like the songs or not. It was kind of, you couldn't argue with the fact that this album wasn't to sell a record. It was because it was the kind of music he wanted. It was the place he was in and where he kind of was. And I think that's kind of been one of those things where, kind of being yourself as a musician and as a person, and also kind of like how to just approach life and how, the more, when I was a kid, it was like, man, Dad, why'd you ever stop touring? But as I get older and as I, speak to him more, I kind of understand that at the end of the day, you know, there's no point in, you know, sacrificing what you can do in your life to please other people, you know. And I think in all areas of life, I think that's kind of one of the things that I've kind of really taken from him, whether that's musically or whether that's just in general. You know, you want to go to this party and you don't want to, I mean, it can be applied anywhere. So I think that's kind of one of those things that I kind of learned from him, is just kind of, you know, you don't owe anybody anything apart from yourself. So, you know, just do what you want.
Good advice. Good advice. Now, look, let's sort of jump forward a few years. When you did the tour with your dad, I mean, 15, that's such a young age, isn't it? Can you remember the excitement must have been incredible. I mean, at 15, I was excited to play in a local pub to 12 people, you know? And at 15, you're going on playing to arenas with, I don't know, 20-odd thousand people. How did that feel, Nic, going on for that first show of that tour?
It was funny because the first show was actually not really a reflection of how I felt throughout most of the rehearsals. I mean, I've known my dad's band, you know, since I was a baby. You know, I mean, there's lots of guys that I've known since I was, you know, on that first tour that I went on the Final Farewell tour. So when I played with them, it was a really welcoming environment. Like, I didn't feel this pressure and this kind of like, oh, you know, here's Phil's son getting behind the drums because, you know, he's here. It was always, you know, super friendly. And so because I knew them, I wasn't nervous at all during the rehearsals. I mean, you know, we played the parts. But when that first show came, I remember again, and my hands were just drenched in sweat because, you know, when it's all good, you know, playing clubs, you know, around town and playing, you know, a few small theaters for some charity gigs. But when you actually step up to an arena for people who have paid tickets to go see, you know, there's no charity involved. It's just like they've come to see Phil Collins. And I think that was one of those things that when I got up on stage before we started playing, you know, because we had a curtain, so you couldn't really see the band.
Sure.
I kind of was like, oh yeah, like it's hitting right now. But after that first show, it was kind of, you know, smooth sailing, because at the end of the day, I feel very comfortable playing. Well, I felt very comfortable playing for him behind the drums because there's 14 people on stage, and I know that my responsibility on that show is to play the drums. Yeah. You know, because I know that you know, the music speaks for itself. Everybody loves his music, and you know, so my responsibility is just replicating those drum parts the best I can, and so that was kind of something that I was comfortable with. Genesis is a bit different because although it's similar to that, it's, you know, it's a much heavier, I guess, you know, burden as far as being behind the drums. You know, it's a lot to kind of, you know, you're trying to replicate these iconic songs to music lovers, because there's one thing of replicating these hits on the radio that everybody likes, but when you got people who actually know music and like music, that's a whole different kind of animal. But honestly, it's funny. I felt more pressure and more nervousness playing with my band whenever we've done shows, because like that's one of those things where it's our songs and you know, and I'm involved in the writing, and it's really our project. So I'm kind of like putting it out there and hoping people really like it. Whereas my dad, I kind of know that everything is going to sort itself out. I just need to focus on the drums because I know, you know, the audience isn't going to show up and like hate it because they love the songs, you know? So, but it really depends. But that first show for sure was, you know, lots of anxiety.
I can just, well, I can't imagine. I say I can imagine, I can't. There's nowhere, I can't get anywhere near imagining it. But hey, it happened, and the footage is there for all to see. And you close your eyes and it's just a perfect fit. And I think if you're a true fan of Phil Collins, of Genesis, I think people like the link between you and your dad. I think they totally respect, you know, what he's done, putting you in the band. You deserve to be there, and why not? You know, you're delivering the goods. So that's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, what I've liked is, you know, we kind of spoke about it briefly before, is when he's kind of turned around and, you know, said opinions or given advice, is that when I feel like I'm there, it's not like I'm there, or at least, you know, he doesn't treat me like I'm his son when we're there at rehearsal, because at the end of the day, it's a professional setting and I'm playing drums for whether it's Genesis or whether it's his band. And so it's more of a kind of like, do the part correctly kind of thing. If it is going to come, it's not kind of like, you know, there is no filter because I'm his son, which has been for me much more rewarding, because although sometimes you may go, oh, right, like, you know, it may not kind of sit well, but at the end of the day, it's like it feels more rewarding when you do actually nail the part, and when you do get that kind of approval that you're actually doing it, and it's not just because of being his son. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where the like he's never made it feel like there's lots of pressure, but you know, I always kind of try to like, you know, push myself the most where he doesn't need to turn around and tell me what he thinks, because it's kind of good.
Yeah, that's perfect. It doesn't get any better than that, I don't think. And there's one question I have to ask, and obviously it's kind of a replica of your dad's kit, the one you have, isn't it? With the concert toms, any non-drummers, that's a tom-tom without a bottom skin. Who made the decision to go? Was it kind of a joint thing to keep the sound authentic? Or was it your decision to do that?
I mean, when we did the first tour, I think, I mean, honestly, I kind of feel like if I would have told my dad I want to use a double-headed kit, he would let me use a double-headed kit. I think we never spoke about it. I just kind of assumed that, especially on that first tour, if I was gonna have to play In the Air Tonight, and like I'm not gonna do that on a double-headed kit. Like, it's just not okay. it's crime, really. So with my band, I use a double-headed kit. It's much more of like a Bonham style setup, you know, one floor, one rack, 2 floors. And I do have 2 concert toms there. But with his stuff and the Genesis stuff, I've kind of, you know, my goal is to kind of replicate, or, you know, make the sound and make it kind of like people kind of take them back to like, oh yeah, that's the drum sound of Genesis, or the drum sound of Phil Collins. And I think you can't do that without a concert tom kit.
Absolutely.
On the first tour, I mean, all the sizes were the same. Obviously, it was a different finish, although he did use a solid white finish, I think in the late 80s, with the concert tom kit. But on this Genesis tour, the only thing that's different is a bigger kick drum, because I just felt with the Genesis stuff, it needed a bit more oomph than having a 20-inch kick drum, which honestly, when you have all the subs, it doesn't, you know, it could be a 20-inch, could be a 15-inch kick drum. It still sound massive.
Of course.
But it's funny because, you know, they're pretty big toms, I would say. Obviously, you've got the 8-10, but it's a 12 and a 15. Those are kind of like the 2 bigger rack toms. So having that 15 right in front of my face sometimes is a bit, when I haven't sat down at that kit in a long time, I get a bit thrown off, because it's not, you know, it's a bit of an odd place for it. But honestly, you have to make it fit somehow. And to kind of play those songs, I feel like I have to use that exact kit. I wouldn't really feel, even now the Genesis stuff, songs that maybe would sound fine with a double-headed kit, I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing it, because when I've rehearsed it and when I've practiced it, it's always on this specific setup. But honestly, I think it's good for the band that because obviously when you hear the drums, they kind of like can feel that like, okay, there's not that much that needs to be done at the front of house or with triggers, because the drums kind of already have that sound to them. So I think that's definitely been more comfortable for my dad and the guys in the band as well.
Cool. And I think from an audience point of view, they'd instantly feel a little bit more comfortable if they can see that kit is kind of along the, you know, obviously it's set up the other way around, but hey, that's, you know, I think to get you to play left-handed would be a little bit of a challenge on this.
Exactly. Well, every now and then where he's had a kit set up, I try it, and it's like, my doing the kick drum on my left is actually not a problem. It's the hi-hat with my right foot that I just can't get. It's pretty difficult, but yeah, I mean, honestly, with that is also one thing where if I'm gonna learn a part, and a lot of, you know, I can to an extent. I mean, I'm not gonna say I can read music, because I'm probably pretty bad at it, but I don't like to read music. So when I do learn stuff, it's by listening to it and watching videos.
Sure.
So when I can see my dad playing the exact same kit that I'm playing, doing what he's doing, it makes, you know, I don't need to kind of like try and take that and adjust it to like a you know, a different configuration. So it makes my life much easier in that regard.
Absolutely. Just amazing. You must be so looking forward to, well, hopefully September, if all goes to plan, and getting out and doing it. And I guess the muscle memory is going to set in when you're repeating it. I mean, I don't know how many nights the tour is in the UK. Is it about 20 something?
Around that, I think. I mean, I'm not too sure. Just I know that we had, you know, there was a few dates that were added. because of certain shows were sold out. So, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. And like, you know, when a few months prior, I'll get the material, you know, back and fresh in my mind. But honestly, it was funny because when we did the rehearsals in November, we did them in London, and I live in the US, so I had to do like a 2-week quarantine when I got there, because that was like, you know, mid kind of like second wave or whatever it was. And so obviously I had learned the material, not learned, but, you know, refreshed myself on the material and really kind of nailed it just to spend 2 weeks in a hotel room. And when I sat down at the kit, the first day of rehearsal, we started playing it and I went, oh my God, like this is what a hi-hat feels like right now. And it was just strange. It felt so weird to, like, you know, to do that. So hopefully we don't have to deal with that when the shows come back up. There's no reason why we should. So, you know, it's all good kind of like getting prepared. But as soon as you're actually playing not with a track and you're playing with people, you know, there's always that kind of like, the first day is always kind of like a bit of an adjustment. But, you know, a few songs in, then you kind of get comfortable again, depending on, you know, stuff like depending on the room and depending on, you know, everything.
Of course. So look, what's the kind of long-term goal for yourself? Would you are you looking to do, you know, the band that you're in now, are you looking to develop that and push it further and further? Is that the plan?
Yeah, that's very much kind of been like a, you know, like a real passion project that, you know, it's been going on for a number of years. So obviously my goals are, you know, really centered towards that and making that a, you know, a successful, you know, group and a successful band where we can go out on the road and tour and do all that. And obviously, you know, there's stuff like the Genesis stuff is obviously stuff that you know, I love doing and being excited about. But obviously my priorities lie much more towards my project and you know, recording and playing, which is, you know, honestly a lot of where I'm at as a drummer is kind of, you know, thanks to them and thanks to that band, because, you know, it gives me a chance to experiment with different, you know, styles and different kind of you know, different approaches towards the music, which I wouldn't really be able to do if I was kind of being, you know, playing for all these kind of already established artists where you're just playing their parts. So yeah, really my focus is more towards that, but obviously, you know, there's different things that come up and right now the Genesis tour, as well as that, is kind of really the two things on the forefront right now.
So you'd be quite happy to obviously do your own band and push that, and, you know, and get creative, and then you'd be more than happy, I guess, to do, I don't know if you'd call Genesis a sideman gig, because you're kind of part of it, aren't you, I guess? But, you know, would you do something like that? I mean, say, I don't know, I'm not going to mention any names, but somebody came and said, hey, we need a drummer for a tour. Are you the kind of guy who would do that? Would you go for that?
Yeah, honestly, it depends on the material and the band. I mean, like, there's lots of stuff where if I'm going to, like, because there's, you know, with my band, and at the end of the day, I've got 3 guys who are also relying on me. You know, so if I am going to do something else, because obviously the Genesis stuff is, let alone that I, you know, love the material, it's also kind of like, it's a special thing to, you know, to be able to, you know, moments to share with my dad as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's obviously something that's always going to last forever, is the memories that I get to share with him. But ultimately it's up to, you know, how much I like the material and whether I feel like it makes sense, you know, in my wheelhouse. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a rock drummer, and whether that's an alternative rock drummer or a progressive rock drummer, that's kind of where I lie. But, you know, there's no kind of boundaries really. If I like the material and if it makes sense, you know, time-wise in regards to everything else that's going on, then, you know, I would love to do it. But, you know, it's really kind of a circumstantial kind of thing.
Sure. Totally get that. Well, look, Nic, thank you so much for your time. This has been a real treat to talk to you, and wish you all the very best for the future. Hope the tour goes ahead, and all the very best for your own band as well. Of course, let's hope we maybe see you over in the UK at some point. Who knows?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I've had a great time chatting, and yeah, fingers crossed for, you know, shows to come back, because although Genesis, you know, we're one of the first kind of tours that are lined up, I mean, there's countless of other great bands that are going back on the road, and I just, you know, as much as I can't wait to play and play to an audience, I can't wait to be in an audience as well.
Sure.
So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Nic. Take care, and we shall see you soon. Thank you.